Hyunwoo Kim crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel, his worn coveralls catching on the metal edges. The air was thick and hot, making it hard to breathe. He wiped sweat from his face and kept moving forward. Behind him, the massive engines of the alien ship hummed like angry beasts. 3 years. 3 long years since the ships came from the sky and took everything away. Earth was gone now, turned into nothing but dust and empty cities. The lucky ones died quickly. The rest, like Hyunwoo, got pulled up into these giant ships to work until they dropped. He reached the broken air filter and pulled out his tools. The metal was strange, not like anything from Earth. It felt warm to the touch and seemed to fix itself sometimes. But today it was broken, and the aliens wanted it working again. "Hurry up in there," called a voice from below. It was Sujin Park, his friend from the old days. She stood guard while he worked, watching for the tall gray creatures that walked the halls like death itself. Hyunwoo had been an engineer once. He used to build bridges and roads, things that helped people. Now he fixed alien machines that he didn't understand. The work was hard, but it kept him alive. In this place, staying alive was the only victory anyone could hope for. The ship was huge, bigger than any city Hyunwoo had ever seen. It stretched for miles in every direction, full of humans working in the dark. They grew food in giant rooms under purple lights. They cleaned the endless hallways. They fixed the machines that kept their prison flying through space. The aliens called themselves the Velthani. They looked like giant bugs walking on 2 legs with hard shells covering their bodies. Their eyes were black and empty, like looking into deep holes. They never showed any feeling, never seemed to care about anything except getting their work done. Hyunwoo finished with the filter and started crawling back. The tunnel led to different parts of the ship, and he had learned to use them to move around without being seen. Sometimes he could hear things the aliens didn't want humans to know about. Today felt different, though. As he crawled past a grate that looked down into the upper levels, he heard voices. Not human voices, but the clicking, hissing sounds the Velthani made when they talked to each other. He stopped and looked down through the metal bars. Below him was a large room with walls covered in lights and moving pictures. Several Velthani stood around a table that glowed blue in the dark. At the head of the table sat the biggest one Hyunwoo had ever seen. Even sitting down, she was taller than the others. Her shell was darker, almost black, and it shone like metal. Strange marks covered her arms and face, glowing with a soft light. This had to be their queen, the one the other aliens feared. Queen Veltara, they called her. Hyunwoo had heard her name whispered in the work areas, always with fear. She was the one who decided who lived and who died. She was the one who chose which worlds to destroy next. The queen was looking at pictures that floated in the air above the table. Hyunwoo could see planets, some green and blue like Earth used to be. Others were red or yellow or covered in ice. The queen pointed at one of them with a long, sharp finger. "This system has 3 worlds with life," she said. Her voice was deep and cold like winter wind. "We will harvest them all within the next cycle." Another alien, this one wearing metal armor, nodded. "Yes, my queen. The ships are ready. Should we prepare more holding areas for the survivors?" "Only take the strong ones," the queen replied. "The weak ones slow us down." Hyunwoo felt sick. They were talking about destroying more worlds, taking more people from their homes. Somewhere out there, families were living normal lives, not knowing that death was coming for them. He tried to move away, but his hand slipped on the smooth metal. His wrench fell from his tool belt and hit the tunnel wall with a loud clang. The sound echoed through the air like a bell. All the aliens below looked up at once. Hyunwoo pressed himself flat against the tunnel floor, trying to become invisible. His heart was beating so hard he was sure they could hear it. "What was that?" asked the armored alien. Queen Veltara stood up slowly. She was even bigger than Hyunwoo had thought, her head almost touching the high ceiling. Her black eyes looked around the room like a hunter searching for prey. "Probably just a human being clumsy," she said after a moment. "They drop things all the time." The other aliens relaxed, but the queen kept looking up. Her eyes moved across the ceiling, searching every shadow and corner. Hyun-woo held his breath and didn't move a muscle. Then it happened. The Queen's eyes found the grate where Hyun-woo was hiding. For just a moment, maybe 2 seconds, their eyes met through the metal bars, human brown eyes staring into alien black ones across the empty space. The Queen stopped moving completely. She stood there like a statue, her mouth slightly open, her eyes locked on Hyun-woo's face. The other aliens kept talking, but she didn't seem to hear them anymore. Hyun-woo felt something strange happen inside his head, like a door opening that he didn't know was there. For just a second, he could almost feel what the Queen was feeling. Surprise, confusion, something else, something he couldn't name. Then the moment broke. The Queen blinked and looked away. She sat back down at the table and started talking about ship schedules like nothing had happened. But her voice sounded different now, not as steady as before. Hyun-woo crawled away as fast and quietly as he could. His hands were shaking, and sweat ran down his face. What had just happened? Why had the Queen looked at him like that? And why did he feel like something important had changed? He made it back to the main tunnel and dropped down to where Soo-jin was waiting. She took one look at his face and grabbed his arm. "What happened up there?" she whispered. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Worse," Hyun-woo said. "I think I saw the Queen." Soo-jin's eyes went wide. "The Queen? Did she see you?" Hyun-woo thought about those few seconds when their eyes met. The way she had frozen, like she was seeing something impossible, a strange feeling in his head, like their minds had touched for just a moment. "I don't know," he lied. "Maybe not." They walked back toward the work areas in silence. Around them, other humans moved through the halls with their heads down and their shoulders bent. Everyone had learned to make themselves small in this place. Being noticed usually meant being hurt or killed. But as they walked, Hyun-woo couldn't stop thinking about the Queen's eyes. There had been something in them, something he had never seen in any Velthani before. For just a moment she had looked almost human. They reached the main work area where hundreds of humans sorted through piles of strange materials. The ceiling was low, and the air was thick with dust. Lights flickered on and off, casting moving shadows on the walls. Soo-jin went back to her job at the sorting tables, but Hyun-woo stood still for a moment, thinking. In the 3 years since Earth fell, he had learned to survive by being invisible. Keep your head down, do your work, don't cause trouble. It was the only way to stay alive. But now something had changed. The Queen had seen him, really seen him, not just another human slave, but him, Hyun-woo Kim, and for some reason, that had shocked her. "Hey, you," called a rough voice. "Get back to work." One of the alien guards was walking toward him, its black eyes cold and empty. Hyun-woo quickly picked up a box of parts and started sorting through them. The guard watched him for a moment, then moved on. As he worked, Hyun-woo's mind kept going back to that moment in the tunnel. The way the Queen had frozen when she saw him. The strange feeling of connection, like something passing between them, that neither of them understood. He had heard stories from other humans about strange things happening on the ship. People who claimed they could sometimes sense what the aliens were thinking. Others who said some Velthani acted differently around certain humans, like they were confused or curious. Most people said it was just wishful thinking. The aliens were too different, too cold and empty inside. They saw humans the way humans saw insects, useful but not really alive in any way that mattered. But Hyun-woo had felt something different today. When the Queen looked at him just for a moment, she hadn't looked empty at all. The workday dragged on like all the others. Hyun-woo sorted parts and fixed broken things while his mind wandered. Around him, people whispered quietly about home, about the families they had lost, about dreams of somehow finding a way back to Earth. But Earth was gone. The Velthani had strip-mined the whole planet, taking everything useful and leaving behind a dead rock floating in space. There was no going back, no matter how much anyone wished for it. When the lights dimmed to signal the end of the work period, Hyun-woo walked with Soo-jin to the sleeping areas. Rows and rows of small spaces barely big enough for one person, separated by thin metal walls. This was where the humans rested when they weren't working. Are you going to tell me what really happened up there? Sujin asked as they reached her sleeping space. Hyunwoo looked around to make sure no one was listening. The sleeping area was full of people getting ready for rest period, but most were too tired to pay attention to anyone else. I saw them, planning something, he said quietly. They're going to attack more worlds. Take more people like us. Sujin's face went pale. How many worlds? 3 in the next system. The Queen said they would harvest them all. We have to tell the others, Sujin said. Maybe Janae's group can do something. Queen Veltara stood alone in her private chambers, staring out at the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship's metal walls reflected her tall, dark form like a shadow against the endless black of space. She had dismissed her advisors hours ago, but sleep would not come. Something was wrong with her. Something had changed. For 300 years, she had ruled the Velthani Empire with cold efficiency. Planets fell before her fleets like leaves in winter wind. Entire civilizations became nothing more than numbers in her reports. She felt no guilt, no doubt, no weakness of any kind. But today, when she looked up at that maintenance grate, everything had stopped. The human's eyes, brown like the dirt of dead worlds, but alive in a way she had never noticed before. When their gazes met, something had happened inside her mind. A flash of, what? Memory? Emotion? She couldn't name it. The feeling had lasted only seconds, but it left her shaken. Now she couldn't stop thinking about it, about him. She had seen thousands of humans since the harvest of Earth. They all looked the same to her, small and weak and temporary. But this one was different. When he looked at her, she felt like he was seeing something she didn't know was there. A soft chime broke the silence. Her door slid open and Commander Yolran entered, his armored steps echoing in the large room. He was her most trusted advisor, the one who had helped her conquer 50 worlds. My queen, he said, bowing low. The fleet commanders are waiting for your orders about the Kepler system. The Kepler system? She turned away from the window, trying to focus on her duties. Yes, begin the harvest protocols, standard procedure. Yolran tilted his head slightly. In their species, it was a sign of confusion. My queen, you gave different orders during today's council. You said to wait for further analysis. Had she? Veltara couldn't remember saying that. After the moment with the human, the rest of the meeting was a blur. Of course, the analysis. How long will it take? You didn't specify, my queen. Should I tell them to proceed as normal? Yes, she said quickly. Then, after a pause, no, wait. Give me another day to review the reports. Yolran's black eyes studied her face. Are you well, my queen? You seem distracted. Distracted. Yes, that was the word. But by what? By a human slave she had seen for 2 seconds? It made no sense. I am fine, she said. Just being thorough. Dismissed. After Yolran left, Veltara walked to her private computer terminal. She had access to all the ship's records, including detailed files on every human aboard. She called up the maintenance schedules, looking for workers who had been in the upper tunnels today. There were dozens of names, but no pictures. Humans weren't considered important enough for individual photos. They were just numbers and job assignments. She stared at the list, frustrated. Somewhere among these names was the human whose eyes had stopped her cold. But which one? And why did it matter? Far below in the ship, Hyunwoo was asking himself the same question. He sat in the corner of the common eating area, picking at his bowl of gray protein paste. Around him, other humans talked quietly about their work, their fears, their lost homes. But Hyunwoo wasn't listening. His mind was still back in that tunnel, staring into the Queen's eyes. You're quiet today, said a voice beside him. Dr. Tae-min Choi sat down with his own bowl. He had been a brain scientist on Earth, studying how the mind worked. Now he cleaned medical equipment for the aliens, but people still came to him with questions. Just tired, Hyun-woo said. Tae-min was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and kind eyes behind broken glasses. He studied Hyun-woo's face like he was looking at a puzzle. Something's bothering you, he said. You have the look of someone who's seen something they can't explain. Hyun-woo glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Doc, can I ask you something? Hypothetically? Of course. What would happen if a human looked directly at one of them? I mean really looked. Eye to eye? Tae-min set down his spoon. That's an interesting question. Most humans avoid direct eye contact with the Velthani. It feels too dangerous. But what if someone did? What might happen? The older man was quiet for a moment, thinking. In my research, I found that humans have very complex neural patterns. Our brains work differently than most species. We feel emotions more deeply, form connections more easily, and them? The Velthani are almost the opposite. Their minds are efficient but simple. No unnecessary emotions, no complex social bonds. They're like living computers. Hyun-woo leaned closer. But what if those two types of minds connected? Somehow? What would happen? Tae-min's eyes widened slightly. Hyun-woo, what did you see? Before he could answer, Soo-jin appeared at their table. She looked nervous, glancing around to make sure they were alone. Jin-ae wants to see you. She whispered to Hyun-woo. Now, it's about what you heard yesterday. The three of them made their way through the maze of corridors to a storage room deep in the ship's belly. It was dark and cramped, filled with old equipment that the aliens didn't need anymore. Perfect for secret meetings. Ginny Lee was waiting, with three other humans. She was young, maybe 25, but her eyes looked older. The weight of trying to keep hope alive in a hopeless place had aged her. Soo-jin told me you overheard something, Jin-ae said without greeting. About new attacks. Hyun-woo nodded. 3 worlds in the Kepler system. The Queen said they'd harvest them all. One of the other humans, a woman named Yoon-suk, made a small sound of despair. More families destroyed. More children stolen. We have to do something, said another man, Dong-hyun-nam. He had been a soldier on Earth, one of the few who survived the initial invasion. We can't just let it happen. What can we do? Asked Jin-ae. We're prisoners on their ship. We have no weapons, no way to communicate with the outside. We could sabotage something, Dong-hyun suggested. Slow them down. And get everyone killed when they figure out it was us, Yoon-suk replied. They argued quietly while Hyun-woo listened. He had heard these same discussions before, good people trying to find a way to fight an enemy too powerful to defeat. It always ended the same way, with frustration and despair. But today felt different. Today he kept thinking about the Queen's eyes. There might be another way, he said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Jin-ae raised an eyebrow. What kind of way? Hyun-woo hesitated. How could he explain what he had felt in that moment, of connection? How could he make them understand that for just a second, the most feared creature in the galaxy had looked almost vulnerable? What if we could change their minds instead of fighting them? He said carefully. Dong-hyun snorted. Change their minds? They're not human, Hyun-woo. They don't think like us. Maybe that's the point, said Dr. Tae-min, who had been listening quietly. Maybe they need to think like us. What do you mean? Asked Jin-ae. Tae-min adjusted his glasses. I've been studying the aliens since we got here. Their brains are powerful but limited. They can solve problems and make plans, but they can't feel things the way we do. No empathy, no real curiosity, no imagination. So, said Yoon-suk. So, maybe that's their weakness. They conquer worlds because they can't understand why they shouldn't. They see other species as resources because they can't feel what we feel when families are torn apart. Hyun-woo felt his heart beat faster. What if someone could show them, make them feel it? How? Asked Jin-ae. I don't know, Hyun-woo admitted, but he thought about the moment when the Queen's eyes met his, the strange sensation of connection. But I think it might be possible. The group talked for another hour, but they reached no conclusions. How could a few hundred human slaves change the minds of their alien captors? It seemed impossible. As they prepared to leave the storage room, Jin'e pulled Hyunwoo aside. "You're not telling us everything," she said. "What really happened when you saw the Queen?" Hyunwoo looked into her eyes, so full of hope and determination. She deserved the truth, but he wasn't sure he understood it himself. "She looked at me," he said finally. "Really looked at me. And for just a second I think she saw something she didn't expect." "What kind of something?" "I think she saw that I was real. Not just a slave or a tool, but a real person with thoughts and feelings." He paused, and I think it confused her. Jin'e was quiet for a moment. "Do you think you could do it again?" "I don't know. Maybe. But it would be dangerous. If she decided I was a threat?" "We're all going to die here anyway," Jin'e said softly. "Either working ourselves to death or when they decide we're too much trouble to keep alive. At least this way, we might be able to save those 3 worlds." That night, Hyunwoo lay in his sleeping space thinking about Jin'e's words. She was right. They were all going to die here eventually. The only question was whether their deaths would mean anything. Above him, Queen Veltara was having similar thoughts. She stood in her chambers, unable to rest. The feeling from yesterday hadn't gone away. If anything, it was getting stronger. She kept seeing those brown eyes in her mind, feeling that moment of strange connection. She had tried to focus on her duties, reviewing reports and making plans. But every few minutes her thoughts would drift back to the human in the tunnel. Who was he? What was his name? What was he thinking when he looked at her? These were not the kind of questions a Velthani queen should be asking. Her people had conquered half the galaxy by never caring about individual enemies. Humans were a resource. The alarm sound echoed through the work areas like a death song. Red lights flashed on the walls and humans everywhere stopped what they were doing. They knew what this meant. Someone was in trouble. Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop as armored Velthani guards marched into the maintenance section. Their black eyes swept over the humans like searchlights looking for enemies. Behind them walked Commander Yolran, his metal footsteps loud in the sudden silence. "All maintenance workers, line up against the wall," Yolran ordered. His voice was cold and sharp like broken glass. Now, Hyunwoo joined the line with 20 other humans. His hands were shaking and he tried to keep them still. Next to him, an older woman named Hyejin was whispering prayers under her breath. "Someone has been spying," Yolran announced. "Someone overheard classified information. We will find this person." He walked slowly along the line, studying each face. When he reached Hyunwoo, he stopped. Those empty black eyes stared down at him like holes in the universe. "You," he said. "What is your designation?" "Maintenance worker, 2847, Hyunwoo replied, keeping his voice steady. "Your human name?" "Hyunwoo Kim." Yolran made a note on his electronic pad. He moved on to the next person, but Hyunwoo could feel death walking beside him. They knew. Somehow they knew. One by one, the guards took humans away for questioning. The line grew shorter. Fear filled the air like smoke. By the time they reached Hyunwoo, his shirt was soaked with sweat. "Come," said the guard who grabbed his arm. The alien's touch was cold and hard like metal. "The Queen wants to see you." The words hit Hyunwoo like electricity. The Queen. Not just any interrogator, but Queen Veltara herself. He was going to die, but first he was going to see those eyes again. They took him through parts of the ship he had never seen before. The walls here were smooth and clean, not like the rough metal of the work areas. Strange lights moved in patterns along the ceiling. The air smelled different too, less like oil and more like the ocean. The guard stopped at a massive door that opened without sound. Beyond it was a room bigger than most human homes, with windows that showed the stars outside. And there, standing by the window, was the Queen. She was even more impressive up close. Taller than any human, with skin that looked like polished black stone. The marks on her arms and face glowed softly in the dim light. When she turned to look at him, Hyunwoo felt that same strange connection as before. "Leave us," she said to the guard. The Velthani soldier hesitated. "My queen, security protocols require—" "Leave us," she repeated, and her voice carried the weight of absolute command. When they were alone, Queen Veltara walked slowly around Hyunwoo. He stood perfectly still, afraid to move or speak. She was studying him like he was some kind of puzzle she needed to solve. "What is your name?" she asked. "Hyunwoo Kim, Your Majesty." "Hyunwoo," she said, and the way she pronounced it made it sound like music. "Do you know why you are here?" He could lie. He could pretend he didn't know anything about the tunnel or the meeting. But looking into her eyes, he found he couldn't do it. "Because I heard your plans about the Kepler system," he said quietly. She nodded slowly. "And what do you think should happen to you now?" "I think you're going to kill me." "Yes," she said. "That would be the logical response. You are a spy. You have classified information. Standard procedure is immediate execution." Hyunwoo waited for the killing blow, but it didn't come. Instead, the queen walked to a chair and sat down. Even sitting, she was almost as tall as he was standing. "But first I want to understand something," she continued. "What did you feel when you looked at me in that tunnel?" The question surprised him. "Feel?" "Yes." There was a moment when our eyes met. Something happened. "I want to know what you experienced." Hyunwoo thought carefully about his answer. This might be his only chance to live a few minutes longer. "Felt like you were seeing me," he said finally. "Not just another slave, but me. Hyunwoo, a real person." "And that surprised you?" "Yes. Your people look at us like we're tools or animals, but for just a second you looked at me like I mattered." Queen Veltara was quiet for a long time. She stared out the window at the stars, and Hyunwoo could see something changing in her face. The cold emptiness was still there, but underneath it was something else, something that looked almost like curiosity. "Tell me about your life before," she said suddenly. "Before?" "Before we harvested your world, what was it like?" Hyunwoo blinked in surprise. No Velthani had ever asked him about his past. They didn't care about human history or feelings. "I was an engineer," he said slowly. "I built bridges and roads, things that helped people get from one place to another." "You created things?" "Yes. My team built a bridge over the Han River that could hold 10,000 cars at once. It took us 2 years, but when it was finished, families could visit each other more easily. Children could get to school faster. It made life better for everyone." As he talked, something strange happened to the queen's expression. The cold mask she always wore began to crack. Her eyes grew wider, and the glow from her markings became brighter. "You built something to help others," she said. It wasn't a question, but she sounded like she was trying to understand a foreign concept. "That's what humans do," Hyunwoo said. "We build things together. We help each other. We create families and communities and try to make life better for our children." "But why?" The question came out like a gasp. "Why spend your energy helping others instead of making yourself stronger?" Hyunwoo stared at her. She really didn't understand. After conquering dozens of worlds and ruling millions of beings, she had never learned the most basic truth about life. "Because helping others makes us stronger," he said. "When everyone is happy and safe, the whole community is stronger. When people love each other and work together, they can do amazing things." The queen stood up suddenly and walked to the window. Her reflection in the dark glass looked small and alone despite her size. "The Velthani do not understand this concept," she said quietly. "We conquer because it makes us powerful. We take what we need and destroy what we don't. It has always worked, has it?" Hyunwoo asked, surprising himself with his boldness. "Are you happy?" She turned to look at him, and he saw something in her eyes he had never seen in any Velthani before. "Pain." "Happy?" she repeated. "I do not know this word, in the way you mean it. Do you feel joy when you wake up? Do you look forward to seeing friends? Do you have anyone you love?" Each question hit her like a physical blow, She sat back down heavily, and for the first time since he had known about her existence, Queen Veltara looked weak. "I have subjects who obey me," she said. "I have advisors who serve me. But love, no. I do not think I understand what that means." Hyunwoo felt a strange mixture of fear and pity. Here was the most powerful being in the galaxy, and she had never experienced the simple joy of loving someone or being loved in return. "Would you like to?" he asked gently. "Like to what?" "Understand what love means." She looked at him for a long time without speaking. Outside the window, stars wheeled slowly past as the great ship flew toward its next target. "Is that possible?" she asked finally. "Can someone learn to feel things they have never felt before?" "I think so. But it requires something your people aren't very good at." "What?" "Trust. Love requires opening yourself to another person, letting them see who you really are, not just the powerful mask you show everyone else." The Queen's markings dimmed as she considered this. That sounds dangerous. Vulnerability is weakness. Sometimes, Hyunwoo agreed. But sometimes it's the only way to become truly strong. Before she could respond, the door chimed. Queen Veltara straightened in her chair, and the cold mask slipped back over her features. "Enter," she called. Commander Yolran walked in, followed by an elderly Velthani that Hyunwoo had never seen before. This one was smaller than the others, with skin more gray than black. Strange symbols covered her shell, and her eyes seemed older and wiser. "My queen," Yolran said, "Elder Kithmara has requested an audience. She says it concerns the human." The elder stepped forward and bowed to the queen. When she straightened, her ancient eyes fixed on Hyunwoo with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "This is most unusual," she said in a voice like wind through dry leaves. "A human in the Queen's private chambers, alive and unrestrained." "The interrogation is ongoing," Queen Veltara said stiffly. "Is it?" Elder Kithmara moved closer to Hyunwoo, studying him like he was a rare specimen. "How interesting. Tell me, human, what do you see when you look at our queen?" Hyunwoo glanced at Queen Veltara, who nodded slightly. "I see someone who has forgotten how to feel," he said honestly. The elder's eyes widened. "Remarkable. And what do you think caused this forgetting?" "Too much conquest, maybe. Too many years of taking instead of giving. Too much power and not enough connection to other beings." Elder Kithmara turned to the queen. "Do you know what he is describing, my child?" "I do not understand the question. He is describing the great forgetting, the thing that happened to our people 1,000 years ago, when we chose expansion over evolution." Queen Veltara's markings flared brighter. "Speak clearly, Elder. What do you mean?" "Come with me," Kithmara said. "Both of you. There are things you need to see." She led them out of the Queen's chambers and through more corridors too. The next few days brought small changes that most humans barely noticed, but to Hyunwoo they felt like earthquakes. The food got better. Not much, but the gray protein paste now had actual flavor, and sometimes there were pieces of real fruit mixed in. The work schedules became shorter by 1 hour each day. Guards stopped hitting humans for minor mistakes. Soo-jin noticed it first. She found Hyunwoo during the rest period, her eyes bright with confusion and hope. "Something's happening," she whispered. "The overseers are acting strange, less cruel. Yesterday, one of them actually helped Minho when he fell down instead of just walking past." Hyunwoo nodded but said nothing. He had been living with a secret that felt too big and dangerous to share. For 3 days, Queen Veltara had been calling him to her chambers, not for interrogation but for something much more unusual. Conversation. She asked him about human customs, about families, about the feeling of creating something beautiful. She listened to his stories about Earth with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Her black eyes would widen when he described things like birthday parties or wedding celebrations, as if he was speaking about magic. "Explain this love concept again," she had said yesterday. "The connection between humans, who are not related by genetics, It's when you care about someone more than you care about yourself, Hyunwoo had explained. When their happiness is more important to you than your own comfort. She had been quiet for a long time after that. This seems inefficient, she had said finally. Why would evolution create such a weakness? Because it's not a weakness, he had replied. When people love each other, they work harder to protect their families. They sacrifice for the good of the group. They build things that last longer than one lifetime. Each conversation left Queen Veltara more confused and more curious. She was like someone waking up from a very long sleep, slowly remembering what it felt like to dream. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Commander Yolran had been watching his queen with growing alarm. He saw her distraction during military briefings, her hesitation when making tactical decisions. Most troubling of all, he saw how she looked at the human slave who had somehow gained access to her private chambers. On the fourth day, he decided to act. "My queen," he said during their morning briefing, "the fleet commanders are becoming concerned about the delay in attacking Kepler system." Queen Veltara looked up from the reports she had been reading. Hyunwoo noticed she had been reading the same page for 10 minutes without turning it. "The delay? You ordered further analysis 3 days ago. The analysis is complete. The systems are defenseless. We are ready to proceed with the harvest." She was quiet for a moment, and Hyunwoo could see the war happening behind her eyes. The old queen, efficient and cold, fighting with something new and uncertain. "What would happen if we didn't attack?" she asked suddenly. The room went dead silent. Even the ship's engines seemed to pause in surprise. "My queen?" Yolran's voice was very careful. "The Kepler worlds. What would happen if we simply left them alone?" Elder Kithmara, who had been attending the briefings since the visit to the memory chamber, leaned forward with interest. But Yolran looked like he had been struck by lightning. "Left them alone? My queen, they have resources we need. Population centers we could harvest. It would be wasteful to ignore such opportunities." "But do we need them?" she pressed. "Our ships are full. Our energy stores are at maximum capacity. We could survive for decades without new resources." "That is not the point," Yolran said, his voice rising slightly. "We are Velthani. We conquer. It is what we do." "But why?" The question came out like a plea. "Why do we conquer worlds we don't need? Why do we take beings from their homes and force them to work until they die? What is the purpose?" Yolran stared at her in shock. In 300 years of serving her, he had never heard such questions. Queens did not ask why. They simply commanded. "To expand the empire," he said weakly. "To increase our power." Power for what? To conquer more worlds we don't need? To rule over more beings who hate us? Queen Veltara stood up, and her markings were glowing brighter than Hyunwoo had ever seen them. "Where does it end, Yolran? When we have conquered every world and enslaved every being in the galaxy, what then?" "My queen, you are not thinking clearly," Yolran said carefully. "Perhaps you should rest. This human has been filling your mind with strange ideas." All eyes turned to Hyunwoo, who had been sitting quietly in the corner where the queen had placed him during briefings. He felt the weight of their stares and knew that his answer could determine the fate of 3 worlds. "The human speaks wisdom," Elder Kithmara said before Hyunwoo could respond. "Perhaps it is time we listen to ideas that do not involve destruction." "Wisdom?" Yolran's voice was full of disgust. "From a slave? My queen, this is madness. Our ancestors built this empire through strength, not weakness." "Our ancestors were not always conquerors," the elder replied calmly. "As I showed you in the memory chamber." "The memory chamber shows lies and fantasies," Yolran snapped. "We are warriors. It is our nature." "Is it?" Queen Veltara asked. She walked to the large viewing window and stared out at the stars. "Or is it simply what we chose to become?" The argument continued for another hour, but Hyunwoo could see it was hopeless. Yolran and the other military advisors could not accept that there might be another way to exist. To them, conquest was not just what they did, it was who they were. Finally, Queen Veltara dismissed the briefing without making a decision about Kepler system. As the others filed out, she asked Hyunwoo to stay behind. "They think I am losing my mind," she said when they were alone. "Are you?" She turned to look at him, and he saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch. She was crying. Not the way humans cried, but her markings were pulsing with a sad, dim light that somehow conveyed the same feeling. "I do not know," she said. "For 300 years my life has been simple. Conquer, rule, expand. But now when I think about those families on the Kepler worlds, I feel pain. Is that normal?" "It's called empathy," Hyunwoo said gently. "And yes, it's normal. It's what makes us care about others. But it hurts. When I imagine children being torn from their parents, I feel actual physical pain in my chest. How do humans live with this feeling? Because the good feelings balance out the bad ones. The joy of love, the satisfaction of helping others, the happiness of seeing someone you care about succeed. Empathy lets us feel all of it." Queen Veltara was quiet for a long time. Outside, the stars wheeled past as the great ship continued toward its target. "Yulran is right about one thing," she said finally. "I cannot rule an empire of warriors if I refuse to make war. My people will not follow a weak queen." "Then maybe you need different people to follow you. People who want to build instead of destroy. The Velthani will never change. They are what they are." "So were you," Hyunwoo pointed out. "A few days ago you would have killed me without a second thought. But here we are, talking about empathy and love." She looked at him with something that might have been gratitude. "You believe beings can change their fundamental nature?" "I believe anyone can choose to be better than they were yesterday. Even alien queens who conquer galaxies." For the first time since he had known her, Queen Veltara smiled. It was a small, uncertain expression, but it transformed her entire face. Instead of cold and frightening, she looked almost human. The moment was broken by alarms echoing through the ship. Red lights flashed, and the floor vibrated with the sound of running feet and shouted orders. The door burst open and Yulran rushed in, his armor clanking with urgency. "My queen, we have a serious problem. The humans in the lower levels are rioting." "Queen," Veltara straightened, the moment of vulnerability disappearing behind her royal mask. "Rioting? Why?" "They heard rumors that you have been meeting with one of their own. They believe you are planning to free them. The rumors have spread to every section of the ship." Hyunwoo felt cold fear wash through him. He thought about Su Jin and Dr. Taimin and Jin A. If the guards thought there was a rebellion, they would kill indiscriminately. "How many humans are involved?" the queen asked. "All of them, my queen. Nearly 3,000 human slaves have stopped working and are demanding to speak with their representative." "Their representative?" Yulran's black eyes fixed on Hyunwoo with pure hatred. "Him. They want to see this human you have been meeting with. They think he has been negotiating for their freedom." Queen Veltara looked at Hyunwoo with shock. "Is this true? Did you tell them about our conversations?" "No," Hyunwoo said quickly. "I told no one except—" He stopped, realizing his mistake. "Except who?" "A few close friends. I didn't think they would tell anyone else." But even as he said it, he knew what had happened. Jinny's resistance network had been watching and listening. When they saw small improvements in their living conditions, they had connected it to his disappearances. Hope, which had been dead for 3 years, had suddenly come alive again. And hope was the most dangerous thing in the universe. "My queen," Yulran said urgently, "the situation is becoming critical. If we do not act quickly, the rebellion could spread to other ships in the fleet. I recommend immediate execution of all ringleaders and a return to strict control measures." The main assembly area was the largest space on the ship, a giant hall where important announcements were made. Hyunwoo had been there only once before, during their first day as prisoners 3 years ago. Now he stood on the raised platform, where Queen Veltara usually addressed her subjects, looking out at 3,000 human faces filled with hope and fear. Su-Jin was in the front row, her eyes wide with worry and questions. Next to her stood Dr. Taemin and Jin-ae, along with other members of the resistance network. Behind them, row after row of humans stretched back into the shadows. Workers from every section of the ship, all united by the simple desire for freedom. Around, the edges of the hall, Velthani guards stood with their weapons ready. Commander Yolran had positioned himself near the platform, his black eyes fixed on Hyunwoo with naked hatred. The message was clear: one wrong word, and the killing would begin. Queen Veltara stood beside the platform, tall and imposing in her dark armor, but Hyunwoo could see the uncertainty in her glowing markings, the way her hands trembled slightly as she waited for him to speak. "My friends," Hyunwoo began, and his voice echoed through the vast hall. "I know you have heard rumors, stories, about meetings between me and the Queen, about possible changes to our situation." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some faces showed hope, others showed fear of disappointment. "Some of these stories are true," he continued. "I have spoken with Queen Veltara. We have discussed many things about humans and Velthani, about the differences between our peoples." "Are we going to be freed?" called out a voice from the crowd. It was Minho, a young man who worked in the agricultural sections. Hyunwoo looked at Queen Veltara, who gave him a small nod. She had told him to speak the truth, whatever it might be. "I don't know," he said honestly. "The Queen is facing the most difficult decision of her life. She can continue as before, ruling through fear and conquest. Or she can try something that has never been done before." "What kind of something?" This was Jin-ae's voice, clear and strong. Hyunwoo took a deep breath. "She can choose to rule through cooperation instead of force. She can decide that different species working together are stronger than any empire built on slavery." The crowd erupted in voices. Some people shouted with joy, others with disbelief. The guards raised their weapons nervously and Yolran stepped forward. "Enough," he commanded. "This human fills your minds with impossible dreams. There will be no cooperation. There will be no freedom. Return to your work areas immediately or face the consequences." "No," said Queen Veltara, and her voice cut through the noise like a blade. Every eye in the hall turned to her. She stepped onto the platform beside Hyunwoo, towering over him but somehow seeming less frightening than usual. "Commander Yolran is wrong," she said. "There will be changes starting now." The hall fell completely silent. Even the guards seemed to stop breathing. "For 300 years, the Velthani Empire has grown through conquest and fear," the Queen continued. "We have taken what we wanted and destroyed what we didn't need. We have ruled over other species like they were nothing more than tools for our use." Yolran's armor clanked as he moved closer to the platform. "My Queen, you cannot—" "I can and I will," she said, her markings flaring bright enough to illuminate the entire platform. "Because I have learned something that my people forgot long ago. I have learned what it feels like to see other beings as real thinking, feeling individuals instead of just resources to be harvested." She turned to face the crowd of humans, and Hyunwoo saw something amazing happen. The fear in their faces began to change to wonder. "You will not be slaves anymore," Queen Veltara announced. "From this moment forward, every human on this ship is a free citizen of a new kind of empire. An empire built on cooperation, not conquest." The explosion of sound was deafening. 3,000 voices cried out at once in joy, disbelief, and overwhelming relief. People hugged each other, wept, and shouted questions that couldn't be heard over the noise. But not everyone was celebrating. "This is treason," Yolran shouted over the crowd. "You have betrayed everything the Velthani Empire stands for." "I have evolved beyond what the Empire stands for," Queen Veltara replied. "And so can others. The other fleet commanders will never accept this madness. I will not allow you to destroy our people's legacy." Before anyone could react, Yolran drew his weapon and aimed it at Hyunwoo. The energy beam would kill him instantly. "If this human dies, you will return to your senses," the commander snarled. "Without his influence, you will remember what you truly are." Time seemed to slow down. Hyunwoo saw the weapon charging, saw the hatred in Yolran's eyes, saw death reaching for him across the platform. But instead of fear, he felt a strange calm. If his death could somehow help the Queen remember her humanity, maybe it would be worth it. Then Queen Veltara moved. She threw herself between Hyunwoo and the weapon, her tall form completely covering him. The energy beam struck her in the chest and she staggered backward with a cry of pain. No. Hyunwoo caught her as she fell, her dark blood spreading across the platform. Around them, the hall erupted in chaos as humans and guards alike reacted to the sight of their queen wounded. Why? He asked as he held her. Why did you do that? Queen Veltara's eyes were dim, but she managed to smile. Because I finally understand what love means, she whispered. It means choosing someone else's life over your own safety. Dr. Tae-min pushed through the crowd and dropped to his knees beside them. I can help her, he said, his medical training taking over. But I need supplies and I need them now. Get him whatever he needs, Hyunwoo ordered the guards. To his surprise, they obeyed without question. As Dr. Tae-min worked to save the Queen's life, Yolran found himself surrounded by his own soldiers. But their weapons were pointed at him, not at the humans. You shot our queen, one of them said, in disbelief. You tried to kill the one we have sworn to protect. She is no longer our queen, Yolran replied. She has been corrupted by human weakness. She saved a life, another guard said. That is not weakness. That is something we have never seen before. Elder Kithmara appeared at the edge of the platform, moving faster than her ancient body should have allowed. She looked down at Queen Veltara with eyes full of pride and sadness. She has remembered, the elder said softly. After 1,000 years, one of us has remembered how to love. Dr. Tae-min worked frantically over the Queen's still form. The wound was serious, but not fatal if treated quickly. Around the platform, humans and Velthani worked together for the first time, bringing medical supplies and offering help. Will she live? Hyunwoo asked. I think so, Dr. Tae-min replied. But she's going to need time to recover. As if hearing her name, Queen Veltara's eyes fluttered open. She looked up at Hyunwoo with an expression of peace he had never seen on any Velthani face. The Kepler worlds, she whispered. Don't worry about that now, Hyunwoo said. Just rest. No. Important. She struggled to sit up despite Dr. Tae-min's protests. Send a message to the fleet commanders. We will not attack Kepler system. We will leave those worlds in peace. My queen, one of the guards said hesitantly. What should we do about Commander Yolran? Yolran stood defiant in the center of his captors. Do what you will with me. I have served the true empire for 300 years. I will not serve this mockery. Queen Veltara looked at him with something that might have been pity. Take him to the detention level. Do not harm him, but keep him secure. Perhaps someday he will understand what we are trying to build here. And if he doesn't? Asked Jin'e. Then he will be free to leave when we reach a suitable world. I will not force anyone to be part of this new empire. Change must be chosen freely. Over the following days, as Queen Veltara recovered from her wound, the great ship began its transformation. Humans were moved from the cramped slave quarters to proper living spaces. Work assignments became voluntary, and people were paid for their labor with credits they could use to buy better food, entertainment, and personal items. Some Velthani accepted the changes easily, curious about these new concepts of cooperation and mutual benefit. Others, like Yolran, remained convinced that their queen had lost her mind. A few requested transfers to other ships in the fleet that still operated under the old system. Change is never easy, Elder Kithmara explained to Hyunwoo as they watched humans and Velthani working together to repair a damaged section of the ship. But it is necessary for growth. What happens now? Hyunwoo asked. The other fleet commanders won't accept these changes. There could be civil war. Perhaps. Or perhaps some of them will be curious enough to see what we have accomplished here. Change spreads the same way fear does, one mind at a time. Queen Veltara had made the decision to turn the ship around and head back toward Earth, not to reconquer it, but to see if anything could be salvaged from the ruins. The journey would take months, giving everyone time to adjust to their new relationships. "I want to show my people what we destroyed," she had explained to Hyunwoo. "Maybe seeing the ruins will help them understand why we need to choose a different path." Sujin had been appointed as the first human representative to the ship's new council, where humans and Velthani worked together to make decisions. Dr. Taemin was establishing a medical center that would serve